All right, welcome everybody today to our panel discussion on how to become a blockchain engineer. I'm joined today by Z Wang from Third Planet, Michael Fung from Coin Alpha, and Aaron Lee from Coca.ai. All right, now I'd like to let each of our guests say a little introduction about the different projects they've been working on. So we'll start with Aaron Lee.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm the founder of Coca. So Coca is a company focusing on the fundamental technologies of machine learning and natural language processing. We recently are about to launch a product that collects and summarizes all this information about each of the thousands of cryptocurrencies from news, discussions, forum posts, social media articles, and all this data related to blockchain.
Yeah, cool. Finally, the source we've been waiting for to give to all of our friends that want to know which cryptocurrency to buy.
Yeah.
Michael, you want to go next?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coin Alpha. At Coin Alpha, we build new financial protocols using smart contracts. And the core thesis is that smart contracts allow you to bypass a lot of the traditional intermediaries in the financial world, like accountants, administrators, and custodians. And that enables small companies and people to do the work that currently only large institutions can. Our first product is called Crypto Baskets. The URL is cryptobaskets.io. And that's where anyone can create a custom token that holds a set of other tokens. So in a sense, you can be your own fund manager and create something that leverages your expertise and allow other people to buy your token and also essentially let their assets be managed by you.
Very cool. Z?
Hi, I'm Z, CEO and co-founder of thirdplanet.io. We are a blockchain company that's focusing on decentralizing the home service marketplace. What we're trying to enable is a marketplace where service providers, small, medium-sized businesses can exchange services with residential homes. And then our first product we'll be introducing in the coming month is a set of protocols to enable this marketplace to be developed. And then to make the development process easier, I think we will also be enabling SDK to enable other app developers to download a single SDK and just kind of dive deep into the application development as opposed to having to worry about 18 different protocols, how to package it together and creating a development environment. So that's kind of what we're trying to create. And then the idea is wrapped around this new category of real estate company called PropTech 3.0, which is the combination of machine learning and blockchain. And we're very excited about this new concept and looking forward to have more members who participate and give us feedback and suggestions.
Great, thanks, Z.
Thanks.
Yeah, so it's good to know a little bit about the background of the different panelists. So now we can jump right into some of the top industry trends in blockchain today. So today we're going to cover 4 main topics. We're going to cover some industry trends in the blockchain industry, some learning paths, so if you want to become a blockchain engineer, where to start. We're also going to cover the job market and what opportunities are out there right now. And we'll finish it up with some tech-related questions on what I think are some of the most interesting topics right now in blockchain technology. Okay, and remember, if you enjoy the talk today, to like and subscribe to our channel, and remember to turn on the notifications because we've actually got a few more talks coming in the next month from these same gentlemen on different blockchain topics, and a course coming next month, so definitely stay tuned for more stuff. So let's jump right in with the industry trends. So I figured before we actually start talking too much about industry trends, one of the big confusions out there right now is what the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain really is and how they relate to each other. So I was wondering if we could start with Aaron to maybe dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, glad to be here, and thanks for hosting the panel. It's actually one of the questions that I get asked a lot, almost every day. What's the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain? I guess a simple way to answer it is you can mine Bitcoin can buy and sell Bitcoins. You cannot mine blockchain, and you cannot sell or buy blockchains. So one is the technology, the thing that powers Bitcoin, make it operational, and the Bitcoin is the cryptocurrency. It's something that you can buy, you can sell. It's one application of the underlying technology. There are many, many other applications of this technology. For example, there are Ethereum, there are Ripples, there are, as of this moment, more than 6,000, I believe, coins that people buy and sell almost every day. And keep in mind, before, at the beginning of last year, it's only less than 100. And this whole technology, just the whole explosion of this information about this technology and all these different applications of this technology just recently came up.
Right, yeah, and it's hard because there's so many different applications of it now, right? We're mainly going to be focusing on the open blockchains today, which mean more like open source, but there's even permission blockchains now, and there's blockchain-based projects that are using ERC20 tokens on top of an existing blockchain. So anyways, it can get very confusing for people that are new to this, but I really like the distinction you gave for that. So this one's for Michael. What current applications do you see for blockchain, and what industries do you think are going to be the primary industries affected?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think as a technological revolution, blockchain will eventually permeate every aspect of our lives. But we're in the early innings of that game, and that's why what we're seeing today is the applications that are currently getting usage are what I call fast money. There are ones related to trading. There's ones related to gambling or gaming. Any application where it's more of a speculative, fun use case. This is very similar to when the internet first started, or when mobile phones first started. The initial applications were relatively trivial in nature. However, over time, as the technology goes mainstream, more and more like long-term, slow money applications, larger enterprises will eventually enter into the market.
And do you think that that's just because people see the opportunity to make a quick buck off of those fast money applications? Mm-hmm. Or, I also see an element of human nature. It's like nobody cared about security and cryptography with their personal data, some of them even with their questionable photos on their iPhone, right? Mm-hmm. But the minute money and value is tied to it, all of a sudden people are buying Trezors and ledgers, right? People are learning about cryptography, right? So I think it on the one hand, it's funny because you've got these fast money applications like gambling coming first, but there's also a tremendous amount of learning about blockchain and about the possibilities of the industry driven by, I think, the fact of human nature.
Yeah, and actually, I completely agree. And actually, I don't think this is actually not something new, because even when the first stocks came around in the late 1800s, it was basically about speculation. When the first stock exchanges appeared in San Francisco, the mining companies in that era, their stocks rose up and down quickly as people kind of jumped in and made fortunes, were made and lost.
Right.
But it underpinned the development of the stock market as we know it today, which is which is very secure, which is very mainstream, mm-hmm. and is a widely accepted part of the market. Mm-hmm. So what we had naturally with blockchain is that the first users of Bitcoin and blockchain were hackers. They were people who were very technically savvy. They were interested in things like, in trading, day trading, and that's why it's fueled kind of like the market as we know it today. But as technology goes more mainstream, as we have wallets where people can access native cryptocurrencies using their mobile phones, with other applications like browsers like Opera, which are adopting crypto wallets, the mainstreamification of the technology will introduce more use cases that the average person cares about.
So any specific industries do you think will be the next ones after this fast money?
I think that it'll still kind of start from the the finance use case. So things like crowdfunding of like individual projects, sponsoring things like Patreon is a good example where it's already distributed, and having that type of crowdsource support on the blockchain is a natural extension. I think that some of the more enterprise use cases like Internet of Things, supply chain, those will be later off, just as we saw with other technologies. Even now, mobile is still slowly being embraced by the enterprise 10 years after the iPhone was launched. So I think the near term, you'll see kind of these use cases which are less about fast money, but are still about aimed at the retail individual user, but allowing them to support in a decentralized way projects that they care about.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Okay, so for the next one, this one's for Z. Do you think the hype around blockchain is similar to kind of like the .com hype leading up to the year 2000, or do you think there's really something there?
Right. I think there is, to follow up with what Michael said about, there's certainly a lot of speculation when it comes to like the trading and the selling, the buying or holding of the cryptocurrency itself, right? So if you define the valuation, I mean, there's definitely like, it ebbs and flows, right? Just like the stock market. But in terms of the underlying technology, how Aaron disambiguate Bitcoin versus blockchain, the technology itself is definitely real. It's definitely one of those foundational technology that actually is mathematically sound. Computation is definitely valuable and useful, right? Whether it's a hype or not from a kind of a general social economic perspective, I think in so many ways it does rhyme with what happened in the late 90s with the dot-com bubble, right? And to kind of quote from like almost like the 1997 Jeff Bezos annual shareholder letter, he actually quoted that, right? He basically said, hey, there has been a lot of kind of hype around the World Wide Web, but in the quote in the annual letter, he actually said the World Wide Wait, in the sense that the internet wasn't ready, and he actually very explicitly explained to all the shareholders like, do not have these overly ambitious expectation of Amazon, but what we're doing is fundamentally sound. We're selling books, right? It has intrinsic value to all of our customers. So I think as long as you follow that logic, basically build real value on top of this baseline technology, whether it's the bubble burst, whether there is a hype or not, like you will be able to ride that wave, right? So I think that's kind of the way you should always evaluate whether you're developing your own project or you're trying to understand some other companies. Is there a net positive economic value to be gained or created using this underlying technology?
Yeah, I think that's a good way almost to evaluate any project, including the blockchain, right? Some of those age-old principles of how to tell if something's going to be successful is really just fundamentally, does it bring people value?
Right.
Does it solve a real pain point? Okay, so, oh yeah, this is probably another one a lot of our listeners are going to be wondering. So, because blockchain technology was really popularized by Bitcoin, a lot of people are wondering, does blockchain have to necessarily be tied to the idea of digital currency, or could it have successful applications outside of that?
I think that blockchain is really a way to incentivize people to transact directly with one another. And so because currency in its native form is a medium of exchange, the concept of currency as a native instrument and incentive alignment using distributed ledger technology, which is blockchain, is a very much a part and parcel of each other. It's certainly possible to have a private blockchain where you have a small permission group that are trading information with one another without the concept of a kind of a native currency. However, it's probably a less powerful use case than one where there is some type of medium of exchange that unites the participants in a network.
Yeah, and I'll add something here just because I've actually always had kind of a gripe that the word that caught on was blockchain, because I think it's a very interesting piece of the technology stack, but at least as long as we're talking about the open blockchains, the real fundamental innovation was it's a distributed network of trust. Here is a online network where two peers can transact, not trusting any third party, right, the carrots and sticks, if you will, of the system, the financial incentives, basically force everybody in the system, whether it's the miner or the people transacting into good behavior, or there's an economic disincentive, right? So I think that obviously currency is one of the easiest things to think of when we think of what could benefit from a decentralized network of trust, right? But I also think of things like maybe one-day voting or some other thing like that, where you don't want to trust a central party to count the votes. Maybe that's possible. So then on the other side, right, the other thing, I wouldn't call this the innovation, I would just call this one of the net effects of blockchain becoming so popular, is that it's pushed cryptography into the mainstream, right? So you're seeing a lot of these closed projects, while they like to use the word blockchain, and I'm sure they're using a blockchain just to use it, right? The main thing they're doing is they're building their systems now with a cryptographic first approach, and they're taking these old banking systems, which in many cases are still using old FTP servers with CSV uploads to do their wire transfers, and finally digitizing them. This blockchain is giving these banks the excuse to finally redo their systems in a secure way with cryptographic principles and in an efficient way that they haven't had an incentive to do for 20 or 30 years. So I still hesitate to group them in with something like Bitcoin, which is an open blockchain, but it's kind of the thing where even if I don't think they always use the terminology right, the net effect is good because it leads to a more secure world, right? And anyway, so I think it makes sense. It started with digital currency, but it's going to have, I always try to imagine, and it's hard with such a new revolutionary technology, it's like, what other applications are going to benefit from this decentralization of trust? Cool, so this one is going back almost towards the closed blockchains and also towards governments, right? Because governments are trying to figure out what to do with this, right? Because what I just said about decentralizing trust, I mean, obviously, that itself is not usually something the government's looking for. They are the trusted party, right? And they're also the ones that we kind of trust to keep us safe. So how do you think the changing regulatory environment's going to affect the projects for this industry?
Yeah, so I think what you're seeing now is a bit of, in technology, what we call the innovator's dilemma, which means that the incumbents have, natively have, are challenged by new technology, and therefore they have sort of like a perverse incentive to prevent it from coming online, because it challenges their status quo. And it's not necessarily as the incumbent as an institutional level, is really the individual actors who are working for that institution, whose jobs may be at risk. Yeah, exactly. It's a great point. How many people at JP Morgan would no longer have a job if the system was fully digitized?
Right.
And I think, in some ways, but I think that all regulators come at it from a good place, because they want to ensure that the average person is not harmed. So we've met with the SEC, and we understand their viewpoint, and their viewpoint is more that even though there've only been a few $1 billion of ICOs, which are a drop in the bucket compared to the larger financial system, the reality is that many of these participants in the ICOs in the past have been retail investors who may not really understand what they're getting into. They're investing into scams, frauds, and losing a lot of their life savings due to the bad actors out there. And that's a bad result. That's something that all of us in the blockchain and cryptocurrency world want to prevent. So fundamentally, I think we're on the same side. I think that where some of us in the space want to engage regulators is really around the kind of like basically trying to find a place where blockchain and crypto companies can operate, but within the guidelines of regulations. So for example, right now the problem is that there's many regulators who want to have a say. So whether it's the SEC, the CFTC, FinCEN, which governs money laundering, the IRS, and they all have a different take on it. So as a blockchain crypto company, we could spend the next 2 years and millions of dollars engaging lawyers and remain in compliance with all of them, and that leaves us with a very narrow opportunity set to actually get our technology out there. So part of the challenge is really engaging regulators and identifying how can we, as a collective, make sure that we're doing the right things by the right investors, but in following guidelines, but also giving us the room to actually promulgate this technology into.
All right, we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about the learning path for people that are interested to learn how to become a blockchain engineer.